Okay guys, here we go again. This is chapter 1, section 4, talking about European cultures, and we've talked a lot about a lot of this in class. This is the fall of the Roman Empire. We had the collapse of the stable society, which led to the Middle Ages. We talked about how because of the fall of the Roman Empire, you have a lack of a stable government, you have the lack of a stable currency, you have lack of trade, and so each manor or area encircling it becomes really its own island with all these different areas, because you had a lot of thieves, you had a lot of trouble going on the roadways between all of these different areas. One of the ways that the king maintained power was that the king gave nobles estates in exchange for their loyalty and protection. And I have this graphic here for you that I hope makes this more clear to you. But remember that the feudalism is a political system. Manorialism is the economic system of the time, and basically this is the idea that just like the knights or nobles gave protection to the king or paid money to the king, the lords of the manor protected the peasants and the serfs in exchange for their services. And remember, serfs were tied to the land, so if that lord sold the land, then he sold the serfs with it. And here's another diagram explaining what medieval life was like. So just take a moment and peruse that before you move on. Now, the improving economy led to an increase in a better food source. You have things like the horse collar and a better plow that made food more stable, and this surplus revived trade and encouraged the growth of towns. And so you're starting to see this resurgence that takes place. All during this time period, you have the power of the Roman Catholic Church. It provided stability and order in Western Europe, where many others were unable to do that. And they were able to do that through the priests that oftentimes lived on the manors in all of the different villages. They maintained a very strict code of conduct, and if you did not abide by the beliefs and rules of the Catholic Church, you would be excommunicated or kicked out of the church. One of the popes of the Roman Catholic Church called for the CRUSADES. They were going to free the holy city of Jerusalem from the Muslims. And so for 2 centuries, that's about 200 years, they warred, the Muslims and the Christians warred over control of Jerusalem. There is a map of the Crusades and its effects. One of the positive effects of the Crusades is that it brought Western Europe into contact with those civilizations that they had been isolated from for many centuries, including the Byzantine, the Muslim, and Asian empires that they had not established contact with in hundreds of years. And this also led to the development of a desire for a sea route to Asia. Western cities purchased spices from Asia through Muslim traders, and after the fall of the Mongol Empire, you start to see all these little independent traders coming up, and prices for the spices and everything started going up. And so this is where they start to look for a sea route to Asia. Now, keep in mind that the Crusades and trade with Asia broke down feudalism, and monarchs are going to start taxing towns and merchants as their source of income, as opposed to the system where, in exchange for protection and money, the king gave nobles land. Taxes provide this source of income, and so it would pay for armed forces, and they in turn enforce trade laws and keep trade routes open, so you're no longer dependent upon the nobles and the knights for that as well. Merchants are able to loan the king's money to search for that water route to Asia, and as I said, monarchs no longer needed nobles for protection. And this allowed for the growth of strong centralized monarchies, most notably Portugal, Spain, England, and France. And those are going to be the strongest that emerged during this age of exploration. The Renaissance starts around 1350. Some will tell you that it's around 1400, but this is an intellectual revolution that led to a rebirth of interest in the cultures of ancient Greece and Rome. And we really see this resurgence in interest in all facets of these cultures: scientific, artistic, cultural, all of them. It stemmed from contact with the Eastern and Muslim cultures, and it led to a scientific revolution. You have a picture here of Galileo. Remember, he was one of the first ones to challenge the idea that the sun was the center, challenged the notion that the earth was the center of the universe, and instead he postulated that the sun was the center of the universe, and he was excommunicated for his beliefs. It also allowed them to acquire technologies that allowed for long-distance sea travel, such as what you see pictured here. You have the compass, you have the astrolabe, you have the caravel, and all of these things allowed for long-distance travel. Henry the Navigator was very influential. He encouraged exploration by creating an astronomical and geographical center so that people would be encouraged to go out and explore the unexplored areas of the world. Remember, they thought that the world was flat and that you would fall off the edge of it, and they did not leave the site of land because they feared that they would not be able to find their way back. And so this is going to lead to Portuguese exploration, a very early Portuguese exploration. And it's going to be the Portuguese who begin mapping the west coast of Africa. And as we talked about in class, Bartolomeu Dias is the one that traveled around the southern tip of Africa, which is known as the Cape of Good Hope. And you have, of course, Vasco da Gama in 1497, who successfully found a sea route to Asia when he landed in India. So this is the end of European Cultures, Chapter 1, Section 4. I will also be posting Chapter 1, Section 5 in a few moments, so be looking for it. Bye-bye.